The war in Ukraine continues to shape world politics, and once again, Washington became the stage for high-level diplomacy. On Monday, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky arrived at the White House to meet U.S. President Donald Trump in a much-anticipated discussion. The visit came at a sensitive moment, only days after Trump's summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Alaska, which according to the New York Times produced no real breakthrough on a ceasefire. Zelensky's arrival in Washington was described by observers as a carefully planned attempt to win back trust and sympathy in the U.S. political system. His previous meeting in February had been tense, marked by sharp exchanges with Vice President J.D. Vance, who had publicly criticized him for showing insufficient gratitude toward American aid. This time, the Ukrainian leader sought to reset the tone. He offered repeated thanks to Trump, used humor to lighten the mood, and arrived in formal attire, a clear shift from his usual wartime clothing. The choice of dress was more than symbolic. According to BBC News, Zelensky responded with a joke when asked about the change, telling reporters he wore the same suit as before, drawing laughter in the Oval Office. His attempt to project warmth and humility was noted by both American and European officials who had gathered for the talks. Beyond style, substance was urgent. When asked what exactly Ukraine needed from the United States, Zelensky did not hesitate. He leaned forward and answered with one word: everything. He later elaborated: weapons, intelligence, training, manpower, making it clear that Ukraine's survival depends on sustained Western backing. Politico reported that his bluntness reflected the desperation of Kyiv as Russian forces continue their attacks with no sign of halting. Trump, who has often been vague in past remarks about Ukraine, sounded more resolute this time. He promised that the U.S. would not abandon Kyiv, although he stressed that Europe must take the first line of defense. Still, his statement, "We'll give them good protection," was interpreted by many as the firmest signal yet of potential U.S. security guarantees. Security guarantees have long been the heart of Ukraine's demands. Analysts quoted by the Washington Post argue that without binding commitments from the West, any deal with Russia would remain fragile. Trump's suggestion that Putin had already accepted some form of guarantees during the Alaska summit raised eyebrows, as Moscow has historically rejected NATO or U.S. involvement near its borders. The uncertainty around what these guarantees mean has left European allies uneasy. Diplomats in Brussels told Reuters that words alone will not reassure Ukraine. What Kyiv and its neighbors want to see is a concrete mechanism, whether that involves long-term weapons supplies, joint defense agreements, or even American troops stationed in the region. Zelensky also brought a personal touch to the meeting. In a symbolic gesture, he handed Trump a letter from his wife, Alina Zelenska, addressed to First Lady Melania Trump. This was a subtle reminder of the human toll of war and the role of families in shaping public opinion. Interestingly, the moment followed Trump's earlier act of delivering a letter from Melania to Putin in Alaska, urging him to consider the suffering of children in war. Such exchanges underline how much soft diplomacy now accompanies hard negotiations. They also reflect the personal dimensions that leaders sometimes use to appeal beyond politics. Still, the question remains whether such gestures can move entrenched positions in Moscow or Washington. What Ukraine ultimately seeks is not just sympathy, but commitment. A continued flow of American weapons would be critical in the short term. But as CNN analysts note, the possibility of U.S. boots on the ground, though still unlikely, could be the strongest deterrent against Russia. Trump did not rule out such an option completely, which some in Kyiv see as a small but significant opening. For now, the White House meeting has bought Zelensky time and some measure of reassurance. Yet the absence of precise details means the Ukrainian leader leaves Washington with promises rather than binding guarantees. Whether those promises will transform into action depends not only on Trump, but also on the calculations of Europe and the unpredictability of Putin. The talks in Washington may not have delivered a roadmap for peace, but they revealed how delicate the balance remains. Ukraine's fight is still seen in the West as a frontline defense of global order. And as long as the war drags on, Every signal from Washington will carry weight far beyond America's borders.